Great. Thank you, Doris. Thank you, Gabby, for organizing. I'm Douglas over in this window. And yeah, so I have a shirt that says Bitcoin is dead. I don't actually believe that, so we don't have to end the conversation early. It's from a conference, and I'm in a company now working on in the Bitcoin space. And so I'm happy to answer any questions you have later. And I guess try to keep it simple. And so a little bit about me. My background is, I guess, academic, technical. So I've been in academia almost all of my life until starting a company in the Bitcoin space. Was most recently a neuroscientist at the ETH University, so the National University here in Switzerland. That's how I came to Switzerland. And interestingly enough, the company originally was a spin-off of a neuroscience lab at ETH. We're a hardware company. And before that, I have experience in mechanical engineering, robotics, AI, so some experience with programming and hardware and things like that. And after, I guess, the university period, I was thinking, what should I do with my life? Next step would be become a professor. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do that. I was very interested in the Bitcoin space. I think I try to do things that I'm passionate about. And so things I think can change the world. So studying the brain is definitely one. And I think cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin is definitely another. And I figured, would anyone ever give a neuroscientist a job in Bitcoin? I don't know. So I decided to try something myself and make a company and give myself a job. And that's where we are today. And our company, just real briefly, we make hardware wallets, which we consider to be the safest way to store Bitcoin and other coins. I guess we can get into that a little bit later, but the point of this call is not so much to talk about our company, but to answer your basic questions about Bitcoin.
Yeah, thank you, Douglas, for presenting you. Yeah, we just start. I have a bunch of questions that I like to ask you because I guess a lot of also of the attendees, we are not as specialized in Bitcoin as you. And so, yeah, I heard a lot about Bitcoin some years ago, and it was a big hype. But today, I don't hear anything, or yeah, perhaps I'm already used to. Where did Bitcoin go? And you said it's not really that, but why is this T-shirt here? It has to be a reason.
Yeah, so the T-shirt's interesting. I guess Bitcoin itself has been declared dead by many different people, even some countries trying to kill it many times. There's actually a website called Bitcoin Obituaries, which they list all the results, and I just checked it, and Bitcoin has been declared dead 383 times in the last 10 years. But it's still around. I also was a little bit surprised. I mean, we're kind of in our bubble, like in the cryptocurrency sphere, so we don't exactly see the more general trends about if people are talking about it or not. So I checked Google Trends, and yeah, we're at a very low trend. If you look for the search for Bitcoin, it's about 10% of what its peak was when there was a lot of hype 3 years ago. And of course, with I'm not supposed to say coronavirus. With other things happening, the general craziness in 2020, it's dominating a lot of news and lives. But if you happen to go look at the Bitcoin price, it's alive and kicking. It's going a bit crazy right now. And so the price is the highest it has been since January 2018. It's getting a bit close to its all-time high, relatively. So there's that. But it's not so much, I guess, the general public, but maybe more so institutions starting to get into the space, being accepted a bit more. For example, a week or two ago, PayPal announced that they're going to accept Bitcoin accounts for their customers. And so about 350 million active users are going to be exposed to Bitcoin. In response to Bitcoin, also Facebook pushing their own cryptocurrency. All major currencies around the world, by that I mean the central banks in different countries, are working on creating their own form of digital currency, a blockchain-based currency. China, for example, is in a quite advanced state. The US is working on it, the EU is working on it, Japan's working on it, and so on and so on. Government regulations coming around, so now banks, like in the US, all banks are legally allowed to hold Bitcoin for their customers. And so there's a growing and growing bigger and bigger ecosystem. A couple more examples. A NASDAQ listed company in September called MicroStrategy. They decided to invest half of their, or maybe more than half of their treasury into Bitcoin, which is $500 million. That might open the floodgates to other stock exchange listed companies actually saying, or publicly saying, that they're invested in Bitcoin. A lot of them privately do it through venture capital funds. Also in October, Iran, the country, announced that they're going to adopt Bitcoin for basically paying for imports, allowing it. And anyone who mines Bitcoin in the country has to sell their coins directly to the central bank. And they're doing this in response to the trade sanctions by the US and other countries in order to try to revive their economy. So I would say Bitcoin's quite well at the moment. And it'll be interesting, of course, you can't predict the future, but a lot of people try. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next years. Oh,
I'm mute. Sorry. Yeah, but you said as high as ever the Bitcoin value. So can I still become a millionaire?
It's not as high as ever, but it's getting closer and closer. I think it was about 15,000, where the highest was around 19,000. Can you ever be a Bitcoin millionaire? Good question. So I guess that question is probably more along the lines of can Bitcoin still do like a 10x or 100x increase in price? I have to say, you shouldn't take financial advice from anyone, especially in cryptocurrency. So you have to do your own research. But I can talk about it a little bit. There's already a 2x gain here to date with the price. The fact that people are asking if Bitcoin is dead, it probably shows some proof that they're still quite early in the adoption. So a lot more people can come. There are a number of logical arguments out there. If you research this, people predicting that, yeah, it could go 10x, could go 100x. Of course, there's a lot of people predicting the opposite. I think given, the momentum that's building with these examples I gave before with the government and in industry, also a lot of venture capital, a lot of companies built around this, a lot of jobs. I think it's unlikely to fade. Yeah, we'll have to see where it goes. Also, an interesting aspect to consider. People who are investors and traders, they might look at the charts and see it's going straight up recently and say, okay, of course, it's a bad time to buy. But there's also something with Bitcoin. Basically, every 4 years, there's a supply shock, where they have the actual supply that comes available, and that happened this summer. If you look historically, price has quite drastically shot up after that, usually a year later. If it happens again, no one knows, but a lot of people feel it's going to happen again. And of course, supply and demand is not linear. So if you cut the supply in half, it doesn't mean the price doubles. It could mean the price does something more.
Okay.
Sorry, we have 2 people raising their hands. So I think it might be a good idea to let them ask their questions. Samir, do you have a question for Douglas?
First was Eliseo, so I'll give Eliseo the
good enough.
That we didn't so.
Yeah, go ahead, Eliseo.
Thanks a lot, Samir. You're such a gentleman. Yeah, hello everyone, and Douglas, thanks a lot for being here. I got lots of questions, so I'll try to keep it short because I want to leave the space also to other participants. But Looking at the chart right now, Bitcoin chart, we've seen that when we were in back in the end of 2017, I mean, we were in the middle of the bubble. There was all these, FOMO thing. I mean, everybody was really basically investing in Bitcoin without even understanding what Bitcoin is. I mean, I think probably 80% of the population who invested in Bitcoin didn't even know what's a blockchain, for example. So I wonder right now we're starting to see, as you correctly say, some it's getting some hype right now. The price is getting high again. So I wonder what are the main fundamentals behind this increase. Are we again seeing these people that are referring to miss out on something, or is there anything, something more? Like you mentioned, Facebook is investing in it. Other central institutions are investing in it. The ECB is investing in it. They want to start to issue a digital euro. So what are the main fundamentals right now? What do you see?
Yeah. So I can speculate here. I'll preface that by saying I'm not an investor at all, trading and things like that. But as far as your questions, do I see, I guess the general public getting into this fear of missing out, this FOMO phase? Hard to say. I don't really feel it right now. Of course, the people who are like really in the space, they're happy right now, of course. But if that's spreading outside of these bubbles, these circles of Bitcoin spheres, hard to say. Again, you can look at the Google Trends. If you compare it from now towards this time period where it was very high, it's nothing. It's 10% or lower. And typically, if you looked at the past situation in 2017, the price did start to go up, and it exceeded the previous all-time high, and then shot about 10, 20 times higher than the previous all-time high, if I recall correctly. And it wasn't until it was quite a bit higher than the previous all-time high that FOMO actually started to sink in. So there's a lot of potential for it to grow in that sense. And again, I think the main fundamentals here, if you talk to people, they'll give you a lot of different things. It's industry doing things, it's the government doing things, it's PayPal doing things and stuff like that. But also a lot of some other people just think, it's basically just supply and demand. So if you cut the supply in half, but the demand is continuing to increase at whatever pace it's increasing, then the price reflects that, and it's going to be something that's more than double. How much, we don't know. And so in my opinion, I think probably supply and demand is the biggest thing, plus just the slow gradual adoption of the mindset in individuals, but also interestingly for this particular time, which didn't exist before, it's also now corporations who feel like they can have some safety getting involved. Safety in the terms of more defined regulation around it, more defined tools to actually hold Bitcoin, large sums of Bitcoin.
All right, thanks a lot.
So I'll ask my question then. Regarding, again, thank you, Douglas, for taking the time to explain us, what are the trends and how Bitcoin is doing. Yes, it's just incredible. The path of nearing its all-time high of $20,000 2 years ago, and now it's $15,000. It's just crazy. It used to be a means of payment, but now it's like a gold standard. So if you have your Bitcoin, you don't want to use it to pay your pizza whatsoever. So this is just astonishing for me. I just wanted to hear your opinion on the recent news. I think a day or two ago, that there was an account holding 70,000 Bitcoins that were dormant for years, and it's the equivalent of $1 billion US, and it belonged to one account. And it moved after 5 years. Everyone was watching, and now it moved to another account, and bam, what happened? The US government actually seized that amount. Could you maybe just elaborate a bit on this and explain us, okay, if now I have my Bitcoin, so does that mean that anyone can actually seize those Bitcoins? So how does that work?
Yeah. Yeah, so you might know more about the details of this particular thing, but as far as I've heard, yeah, 1 billion in Bitcoin moved after 5 years, and it was due to the Department of Justice in the United States seizing it, and this was considered to be used for basically paying for drugs on the black market, Silk Road black market. And so, of course, it was a lot less than $1 billion 5 years ago, but it's worth $1 billion now. And Silk Road was quite widespread in the news. Many years ago, is maybe the most, I guess, well-known, well-used underground black market, drug market for buying drugs. And so, as far as I understood, there was most likely a plea bargain where the person who owned this was caught and voluntarily or somehow signed. He signed his name to a document basically giving the rights to the government. And so whether or not someone can seize your coins, depending on like what I think basically the essence of this question is what does it take for someone to take your Bitcoins if you have Bitcoins? And so the main thing here is some of the nice features of Bitcoin that make it very interesting, very popular among different people is that it's basically decentralized, neutral, censorship resistant. And what that means is there's no centralized controller that can manipulate it or reassign it. It's censorship resistant. That means if you want to make a transaction, no one can stop it. No one can reverse it. It's neutral, which means you don't need permission to use it. Anyone can use it. And all of these things are possible because of the way it's structured. And it really boils down to what's called a private key. And so a private key is very simple. It's just a random number. And it's kind of like a key used to unlock your door. But in Bitcoin, you use this key to be able to move Bitcoin. And so you have to take care of this key very, very carefully. This is kind of where our company comes in. We make products that we think secure this to the best way possible. And so whoever has this key can take your coins. And so the US government can't just seize any key it wants. It needs to actually physically get the key. And so either by someone giving it to them. In this case, it sounds like they didn't get the key itself. They made a transfer to an account that the US government owns. And then the US government has sole possession of the key. Because if they just took the key, the other guy could still send it somewhere else later in the future. And so keeping this key secret secret and safe is the important thing. So you probably don't have it on your computer. Probably don't want to have it on your mobile phone. You want to keep it somewhere safe.
How can you identify that person?
How can you identify that person? So right now, if you only ever operate in the cryptocurrency space, it can be hard. I won't say impossible, but it can be very, very hard. If almost impossible to identify you. But the issue comes in when you want to exchange Bitcoin into the traditional world of fiat currency, so Swiss francs or US dollars. And that means you have to use, you have to start dealing with banks. And so all of the exchanges nowadays, or almost all of them, have KYC, AML laws. So they know who you are. And that's basically where governments are inserting themselves in order to, for tax purposes or money laundering purposes or whatever. They insert themselves in the exchanges and do tracking that way. Early on, Bitcoin was advertised as being anonymous, but that's not exactly true. It's more so pseudo-anonymous, because how it works is the blockchain. Just really simply, the blockchain is just a database. That's all it is. It's a very, very slow, very inefficient database, but it's a database that can't. It's immutable. That's a special thing. And so any transaction you ever do, it's in the database, in this blockchain. And so there's some, you can do some data crunching, some statistics to kind of track where coins move. And so that's how people know that these coins are related to the Silk Road. They can do this data analysis to accounts that were known to be held by Silk Road. And at any point, if you take one of these addresses and link it to yourself, for example, by an exchange, if you send Bitcoin to exchange, then you can use analysis called chain analysis to kind of identify your finances. There are a lot of ways to in Bitcoin to I guess hack or not hack, stop this chain analysis from happening, breaking these analysis rules. There's various protocols you can use. And interestingly, in the protocol itself, the protocol level, there's a lot of work being done to actually make the transactions themselves a lot more anonymous. And so that'll be interesting when Bitcoin, if in the future, or when in the future, Bitcoin becomes actually a bit almost true anonymous, how governments will handle that. That'll be interesting.
Thank you.
So there are also two people mentioned, or a small discussion in the chat between Roland and Max about for what Bitcoin is. So that's also a question that I ask myself all the times, why I need Bitcoin, or what can I do with Bitcoin? Because I don't, I can't go to the Coop or the Migros and pay with Bitcoin, or I can't, I don't know, pay my orderings from the stores I ordered. Or what can it do, or what is it for? Yeah.
I don't see the chat, so Roland probably answered it better than me, but I'll try to give my answer. First of all, what is Bitcoin? It's pretty simple. It's just money. It's a digital form of money. And when I first got into it, I probably, like almost everyone, I just thought it was monopoly money. It's like, why are people even talking about this? But then coming from an academic background, I was really, I guess, taken aback or really attracted to this one problem that Bitcoin solved, which is it's called the Byzantine generals problem. It was an unsolved problem until Bitcoin came along, and basically it's a solution to basically you don't have to trust people. For example, if you have a bunch of Byzantine generals talking to each other about invading a castle, and there's messengers, there's a way you have to figure out if you can trust the messengers or not. But it's the same on the internet. If you're talking to a bunch of random people on the internet, how can you trust them? And trust is, of course, very important when it comes to money. How can I trust that I'm actually sending the right amount of money to this person? How do I trust that this person who's sending me money is not sending the same money to someone else? Called the double spending problem. And Bitcoin solved that. And so basically, you don't need to trust anyone, and you can have immutable money fixed in the blockchain ledger. And so it basically made money possible on the internet for the first time. And that's, I think, just if you forget about everything else, just this property alone is extremely powerful. And to me, it's not a question of if it's going to succeed or not. It's just a question of, okay, how exactly do you do it? What is the implementation? What implementation is going to make this the best? And so right now it seems like Bitcoin is that, but it could be something else in the future. But there's a lot of smart people working on Bitcoin, so I think it'll probably stay to be Bitcoin. So there's that, and then what was the next part of the question?
No, it was just a small discussion, and Roland even let me know that I can pay at Migros with Bitcoin, so I didn't know.
Okay.
But I also saw that Cedric raised his hand, so perhaps I hand over to Cedric if he has a question.
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, my question, I was preparing it but that was the right moment to ask it. It was about the value of Bitcoin, because at the end, I first to reply or to give a bit my thinking on the first question, I don't think you need to understand everything to invest in. For example, a lot of people, they don't understand how, I don't know, BMW is making car, but they're still buying share of BMW. But at the end, you have an idea of how they are making money. So it's just about what are you confident in investing in. And my question for Bitcoin, thanks Douglas for just reminding us about what's the purpose of Bitcoin, because sometimes I ask myself, how can I pay someone that I don't know and that I don't trust without involving another bank or another counterparty? And this is why Bitcoin is existing. But my question is, don't you think Bitcoin lose its purpose with this so high valuation and the hype behind it? Because with one Bitcoin equivalent to $15,000, how can you justify this value in the real world? With $15,000, I can buy grocery for 1 year in Migros. With one Bitcoin, I cannot buy any grocery in Migros.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you. So if I understand the question right, it was like how to justify the value. Like it seems, I guess, quite high value. What's the justification for that?
Yes, and don't that not really good for Bitcoin at the end, with the purpose, which the purpose is to exchange money, and more, you have a currency with a high volatility. Yeah. So how can you say tomorrow you are rich and the day after you are poor?
Yeah, sure. So that's a very common criticism of Bitcoin, is the volatility. Also, like what actually gives it the value. To touch on one of the first things you said, I fully agree with, is you don't necessarily need to understand the details of Bitcoin, how it works, in order to use it, make use of it. It's kind of like credit cards. I don't think anyone really understands how a credit card works under the hood, with all of the money transferring processes going on behind the scenes, and so on and so on. But you use a credit card, you go to Migros, and you can buy some food. And so Bitcoin, I would say, to me, I think it's still, it's probably surprising to people just getting in space, but I think it's still quite new, quite early in the phase. And so the adoption itself is, I would say, quite small compared to like other types of financial things, currencies or gold or whatever. And so naturally the volatility will be quite high. And so my prediction is, as we go forward, as there's more adoption, the volatility will continue to decrease and decrease and decrease. And if you look at the historical volatility, this is what has been happening. So to me, it's more so, I think maybe 3 years ago, 6 years ago, you could say Bitcoin is basically kind of like a toddler trying to figure out how to walk. It falls down a lot. I think it's a bit beyond that stage now. It's maybe an elementary kid learning how to read and write. And I think there's a lot of room for it to grow in that sense. What gives it the value? What should the exact monetary value be? I can't really say. Everyone kind of has to make up their own mind on that. But I do personally, I think the value right now is still quite undervalued. I think it'll be worth a lot more, and it depends on what the use cases are that you're talking about. So in the past, there's been a lot of talk about payments. So again, going to the grocery store, paying for stuff. But in the last years, that's been dying down a lot, just because of, if you actually want to do payments, say on a credit card scale, on a Visa scale, there's just not enough bandwidth in the protocol. And it's, some could say increase the bandwidth, but it's difficult to increase the bandwidth because then you start sacrificing the security. So this Byzantine generals problem can start to fail if you try to pump too much data going through it. So more recently, and I think this is also one of the strongest reasons it was invented in the first place, was more so as a place to hold money where a government doesn't have control of it. So it's a decentralized form of money. And there's a fixed cap on Bitcoin, which is 21 million coins. So it can never be more than 21 million coins. That's not to say we can't increase the money supply, because you can, in effect, infinitely divide Bitcoin. You just add more decimal places. So you're always going to have enough to support whatever scale marketplace you have, whatever cash velocity is needed. But in the sense of investing, if you can have a currency that doesn't inflate, or it's designed not to inflate, it's actually designed to deflate a bit, then there's some value to that. That's why these big companies are looking into using it as a treasury reserve. That's why people in like Venezuela and Argentina, for example, have quite high, a much higher appreciation or use rate of Bitcoin, because those countries have hyperinflation. It's a question. You can look at, okay, you think, okay, maybe that's not going to happen here, but if you look at the United States, for example, you look at, I have to mention the word again, coronavirus, financial stimulus. The United States raised their money supply, both the M1 and M2 money supply this year, by over 23%, almost 40% for the M1. If you look at the 10-year increase in money supply, the M1 money supply in the US, it's tripled in 10 years. And so, logically, you would think if there's more money, there's going to be inflation. We haven't really seen it so much yet. So there's a lot of people who are in it, same reason for gold. That's why people call it digital gold. They're thinking, this could be a hedge against inflation, could be a hedge against central banks trying to dig out of their piles of debt. But I can't, I don't have the skills, I guess, to convince people that it does have value or not. To me, I think, again, fundamental thing that it solves the problem of trust. To me, that's incredible. It allows for a lot of different things to happen, not only in the money field, but, you could use it for, I'm mentioning the other word now, like elections, or supply chains, or lots of things. And so I would say people have to do their own research, make up their own mind about it. But I see like this technology itself, the fundamental technology, holds a lot of promise to change a lot of different areas.
So we have another. Oh, sorry, Cedric.
No, just say thank you. Thanks.
We have another question from Francesco. He says, a little provocation. What happens if all Bitcoin holders in the world ask for fiat currencies in exchange?
Well, then the demand would drop to zero. And I guess the value would drop to zero also. I guess if you look at the relative scales of cryptocurrencies to money in the rest of the world, it's still quite small. So I don't think it's going to pump up the price of US dollar or Swiss franc, but probably just drop the price of Bitcoin.
Max is just mentioning, then the price will drop, but it looks like the opposite is happening.
Maybe I don't understand the point, but I could guess. I guess, as the price rises, a lot of people want to sell their Bitcoins. If you've been holding since 2010, when Bitcoins were a few pennies, you've probably been selling along the way. And so it's going to be different for different people. I think this is also one of the dynamics between, the volatility and also these hypes and the bear markets, the bull markets, is I guess people getting to different points in their lives where they want to cash out and stuff like that. There is a pretty good subset of people in the Bitcoin space who just never plan to cash out. this is, I guess, like the hardcore Bitcoiners, where they think just hold it until Bitcoin actually can be used for payments, where we don't need to have other currencies, where we can exchange value with our friends and businesses with it. But who knows?
Also,
Yeah,
Eliseo, sorry to interrupt, but Eliseo has his
no,
hands raised
yeah.
for a while.
I saw it. I just read the answer Max gives. He say, by the opposite, I meant what happens if all fiat holders in the world ask for Bitcoin in exchange.
Oh,
and historically, it looks like that is the trend. Yeah, we can dig in this discussion later, but yeah, as Gabby mentioned, we have another hand raised up, so I hand over to Eliseo to ask his question.
Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt this interesting conversation about the valuation, but
No.
I would like to know, for example, getting back to trust. I mean, Douglas, you mentioned trust just a few seconds ago. We know that some institutions are working on issuing their own cryptocurrencies. We mentioned before the ECB is working on a digital currency. So I wonder, I mean, the main advantages of having cryptos were to have a decentralized currency, let's say, which nobody was really, let's say, owning. Nobody was owning the process to issue it. It was peer-to-peer. There were no fees, no transaction costs, and so on. Now that central institutions are starting to issue currencies, I mean, what's the point in having a cryptocurrency issued by a central institution or an organization? I think about Facebook, or tomorrow would be Amazon, Alibaba, or whatever. What's the point? I mean, we will lose all the main Bitcoin's advantages, being decentralization, being peer-to-peer, and all the process behind, and not having a central institution owning it. So that's my question. What's the point in having a central organization issuing the crypto? Can you hear me?
So,
okay. Sorry.
We can't hear you anymore,
No.
Douglas. Oh.
I think there's a small delay. I don't know.
Okay. Sorry.
Probably the line dropped.
Yeah.
I guess my internet got slow for a bit. Am I back?
Yeah.
You're back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think I got the gist of the question. It's like, yeah, if Bitcoin has these special properties, what's the point of a company or a government making their own currency?
Right. And the question is, will eventually the value, I mean, will eventually the currency lose all the other properties of decentralization, being peer-to-peer, having no transaction fees, and so on?
Of the currencies made by like Facebook or a government.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yes. So they would lose these properties. Facebook, what they wanted to do originally with their coin was to basically peg it to a basket of global currencies. So to kind of make a global currency in that case. So peg it to US dollar, euro, yen, whatever. Governments around the world freaked out about that. And they basically started making a bunch of regulation to basically make it very, very difficult for Facebook to do that. They're all worried about their own currencies getting, I guess, consumed by that. And Facebook is huge. I think they have 3 billion active users per month. And so, Facebook, if they got the power of money, there's a lot of, I guess, political philosophy or around general philosophy around, if you can control money, you kind of have power. And so Facebook having this range could have a lot of power that maybe even subsumes what governments can control in some ways. And so governments are afraid of that, I guess rightfully so from the government point of view. And so now, of course, governments are like, okay, we need to think about this seriously. We need to do something. So they're making their own currencies, which in essence, it'd be like a stable coin. Stable coin just means it's a cryptocurrency where the rules define it to be pegged like 1-to-1 to the dollar, or 1-to-1 to the franc, 1-to-1 to gold, for example. And governments interested in doing this, and of course it's going to lose these decentralized properties, this immutable properties, and so on. The governments can basically do whatever they want with it because they're going to be the owner. And of course, governments are interested in that, and they need. It really comes down to taxes, and so governments can control what money their citizens uses by basically telling the citizens you have to pay your taxes in the national currency. And so governments, of course, still have power in that sense. It's hard to say that Bitcoin would overtake that. But if you look at a long-term game, typically what like an evolutionary kind of perspective, the form of money that kind of serves the purpose most efficiently, most trustworthy, often tends to win in the end. And so it'd be interesting if, how that handles. Will there be more attacks on Bitcoin, or will government currencies actually start to become a bit more like Bitcoin, like a fixed supply where you can't have inflation, very transparent where you can see the ledger, the blockchain that they have. It'll be interesting.
So just to come back, when I, as a Bitcoin dummy, will perhaps decide to buy some Bitcoin, what I'm wondering, I can't put it in my normal next to my 20 francs pieces. So what I have to do with that, I know it's on a blockchain, and I don't, as you mentioned, I don't understand that, as I don't understand how the credit card works. You're completely right. But what I have to do with the Bitcoin, I don't have it in my hands. So how have I to imagine that? Perhaps a stupid question for some of you, but how you can store this Bitcoin. You mentioned before that there are different things and that I have a key, etc. But how it works really?
Yeah. So I guess the best way to store it is on a Bitbox hardware wallet, of course, that our company makes. Thank you for the question. But no, I guess. So yeah, it does come down to this private key. So it is physical in one sense of like bits on your computer or whatever. A lot of people when they first get in, the first starting point is to go to an exchange, Bitcoin Swiss in Switzerland, for example. And there's a lot of other exchanges all over the world. And there, it's very, very simple. It's kind of like online banking. You just wire some money in and then say, okay, I want to buy some Bitcoin or I want to buy some other cryptocurrency. Okay, I'm ready to sell it, and so on. The issue there is that there's this common saying in cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin that if it's not your key, it's not your coins. So if you don't actually own the key, you don't own the coins. And so what an exchange is, which is like banking today anyways, is an IOU. So they have an IOU to give you Bitcoin if you request it. And that's fine. It's pretty straightforward. There's Coinbase in the United States that makes it very simple, for example. But the problem is, it's not in your control. It's in the exchange's control. So if the U.S. government comes in and says, okay, this person's suspicious, give us their coins, Coinbase is going to give the U.S. government your coins. More so, there's been billions and billions in hacks. We're in billions and billions in value lost through hacks and exit scams, through exchanges also. And so, you know, the thing with Bitcoin that really requires a mental shift is that gone is gone. So, like for example, if you know, there's a mistake you make, you bought something online you didn't want to, you want to get a refund, you can do a chargeback, you get your money back. Or if the bank makes a mistake wiring money, they can get the money back. So there, you can reverse things. People are very used to this. For example, if you lose your password for a website, you can reset it. But the problem is, I guess the mental hurdle is, like with Bitcoin, gone is gone because of these this immutable ledger and all these things. And so if you lose it, it's gone. So you have to spend extra careful attention, like, you know, don't forget your password to your wallet, for example. That's probably one of the biggest reasons people lose their funds. Don't get your keys stolen. So definitely don't put it onto your computer, like a software wallet, or on your phone. Maybe just small amounts are okay, but don't put big stuff there, because there's a chance it'll get stolen by malware, which has also happened a lot in the past. Yeah, and exchanges, like there's exit scams where you know, the founder just disappears. There's a case in Canada where the founder of a Canadian exchange died. He was the only one with the key. So everyone's funds were gone, locked. And so what we do in our company, but there's other companies, of course, is we make hardware wallets, where a hardware wallet is basically like a miniature computer. Like in our case, it's a USB stick. And on the stick, you generate the private keys on the device. The keys never leave the device. And so they don't touch the internet or your computer where malware or thieves could find it. And then in a way, it does become a bit physical, in the sense you do have something tangible you can touch. That here's my coins. It's not exactly coins, it's the keys to your coins, but you can feel it. And yeah, we think it's the safest way because you know, if you have a dedicated computer that's only doing one thing, and you vastly limit the communication into and out of it, then you can have great security. Yeah.
So it's not as secure as one might think. So people get their Bitcoin stolen, hacked, and you know. So how? I mean, I understand that now are devices that you can, you know, put, you can secure your Bitcoin. But nowadays, if I invest in Bitcoin, what's the probability that I will be hacked? For example, for a person that uses one password for everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to say. I would say there's a lot of phishing attacks. When I was in San Francisco about a year ago, you know, it's a big Bitcoin space there, and I heard numerous stories of phishing attacks on people's phones. And, you know, there's rich people in San Francisco, and they lost hundreds of thousands that they're storing on the phone through like SIM swap attacks and things like that. So I would say it depends on, of course, if you have more money and people know about it, you're a higher target for like a targeted attack. I think also as Bitcoin increases in value, and we're seeing this, there's going to be more and more hackers saying, okay, it's worthwhile to try to steal your funds. So we're going to start trying, and more malware will come in the future. If you look at the malware kind of right now, it's really interesting. Like maybe 3 years ago, also a bit now, a lot of it was focused on, like in the crypto space, a lot of it was focused on ransom attacks. So like basically locking down your computer and demanding a ransom to unlock it. But I mean, the thing is, if they have the ability to basically encrypt all of your files on your computer, they also have the ability to read all of your files on your computer or your phone. And so if you have a secret there, they can read it and take it. But they weren't really focused on that because they were making more money from ransom. But you know, that balance might change in the future. An interesting, just as a side note, an interesting thing was people thought, you know, the ransomware attacks would keep going bigger and bigger, but they actually dropped. They became quite a lot less in the last years, although they're picking up again. Whereas what the attackers did instead was don't tell you we're in your computer, but they start using your computer resources to mine cryptocurrencies. Monero is another cryptocurrency, and they're making more money doing that. But in the future, yeah, where are they going to make more money? It's kind of a question. So these attackers, they're not just script kiddies. They're some organized and professional people that make business decisions about what's going to give us the biggest return on investment.
Okay.
So thank you. I guess we have a last question. Perhaps we have time for it from Cedric. He raised his hand.
Yeah, a last one before saying goodbye to everyone. So we talk about until now about Bitcoin, but what about the other cryptocurrency that existing like Ethereum, Base coin or stable coin, all of these coin? I would like to have your view on the fact that do you really believe that Bitcoin will be the one that will stand at the end? Because I can see the world as cryptocurrency as a lot of rings, where you have a lot of different rings, but at the end of the day, one will rule all of those rings. Like actually, the one ruling our world is the US dollar. Most of the transaction and the investment are made in US dollar. So do you believe Bitcoin can achieve that? And don't worry, I will not take your answer as 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. So first of all, I say being in Switzerland, you have to be neutral. That said, I think there will be multiple coins, probably multiple coins for multiple purposes. And I think in terms of, at least in terms of, asset management, investment, things like that, maybe payments, I think it's most likely going to be Bitcoin. I think it has the strongest thing going for it right now. I don't really see other coins overtaking that. That's not to say something might not come along in the future. But again, anything that comes along in the future is going to have a huge network effect that they're going to have to overcome. And the thing is with Bitcoin is, it's also under development. So trying to improve it in different ways. It's under quite active development with really, really smart people around the world. Of course, the other currencies also have very smart people working on it to varying degrees. Ethereum is one example. It'd be interesting. They're changing their code base quite drastically in the next recently in the next near future. So it'd be interesting how what happens after that. But yeah, I think yeah, to me, Bitcoin seems like it has the I guess the fundamentals behind it.
And to perhaps to finish, it's just a statement of Max. I'm not sure if he's working for you, Douglas, but he just said, okay, when using a hardware wallet and following the advice on how to use it, I'd say the chance of loss of funds is minimal. The risk that you lose your backup is much higher than you're getting hacked. Yeah. So I guess that's perhaps the best advice how to do that. And also like the audience know, if they want to know more about a Bitcoin or more about how they should save or handle Bitcoin, so please take the chance and contact Shift Crypto on their website or yeah, or on their LinkedIn or social media accounts and just get in contact with them. And we don't want to make too much advisory here, but yeah, just that you also know that you can at every time get in contact with them. Yeah. So the hour is already almost over. We also see that some people are jumping to the next meeting they have. It was super interesting, Douglas. Thank you very, very much for giving us this insights. There's also people saying thank you. That was super interesting and a great coffee talk. And we'd like to have you here next time also as a guest. Sure. Yeah. Asking the questions to someone else.
Yeah, Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The pleasure. Yeah, and again, if you want to hear more about us, the shiftcrypto.ch. And we also, if you're interested in some more of the technical details, I think we have a really great blog series. So you can check out and learn some things from there.
Yeah, really nice. And for those who, when we are back in new normal, you can also come and pass by the garage and meet Douglas in person.
Those people are saying that for almost 7 months. I think we should not say back to normal again, no?
I don't know. My impression is that the world is going so crazy. So I don't believe at the normal until, two words are not necessary anymore.
Good. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Douglas.
Douglas.
All the thanks to Douglas. The chat is going crazy, and everyone is saying thank you. It is super cool. Thank you, Douglas.
Thank you, Douglas. Yes.
Enjoy your day.
You too.
Happy weekend.
Happy Friday. Bye bye.
Weekend. Thank you.
Bye-bye.